All right, so thanks so much for joining us tonight, everyone. We are going to be going through our 2024 Ironman Lake Placid course preview and race tips. My name is Jennie Hansen. I am a longtime QT2 athlete. I'm a now former retired pro triathlete, current age group athlete. And I'm an Ironman Lake Placid frequent flyer. I finished there 5 times and just love the race. I've been up and done it a lot. And come up and cheered or coached a race every single year. I'm a QT2 coach. I've helped over 20 athletes across the finish line by this point. I'm also an upstate New York native, hence why I've been up to Lake Placid so many times. And back ages ago in 2013, I was the Ironman Lake Placid champion, got that opportunity. All right, so just an overview of our presentation tonight. We're going to be going over the QT2 Systems Five Cornerstones. And we're going to be applying them kind of to our final weeks leading into the race, which we're in the midst of now. We'll talk a little bit about pre-race and check-in logistics. The day before and race morning, they'll go over the course in some detail and talk about how to pace and fuel over the course. All right, so just a reminder for those of us who are or aren't QT2 Systems athletes, our 5 cornerstones are training, restoration, and day-to-day nutrition, fueling, pacing, and mental fitness. So if we start with our training pacing cornerstone, applying that to our final weeks here that we're in now, these are kind of when we're finishing up our final key race specific sessions and getting to our taper. So during this time, we want to be trying to simulate race conditions and intensities during training. So for Lake Placid, it's something things we might want to be targeting are lake swims, rides that have steady, moderate climbs, practicing descending, running hills up and down, and also being prepared for any weather conditions. Lake Placid really we were talking about that before we came on, can do anything from being 50 degrees and raining to 85 degrees and sunny and humid. So it's good to be prepared for anything that can happen there. You want to practice riding the wind. The wind can pick up, especially kind of on the second lap of the bike. And train on the course if you can. If you can get out there a little bit early, maybe get down the keen descent just to ease your mind on that. That helps a lot. And then you'll want to do a dress rehearsal, ride and run just to test your race gear. Make sure everything's comfortable and working well there. You want to be working at your race targets. So depending on what metrics you use, you might want to be spending some time at your intended race heart rates, your intended rating of perceived exertions or RPEs, your intended run pace or bike powers. In the final weeks, there are no fitness gains. You want to just focus on the frequency and feel. Don't overtrain or panic train. Err on the side of recovery, and remember, it's more important to be rested than to be sharp. Just someone told me, a little bit undertrained is far better than even a tad overtrained, and include some days off in there for full restoration. If we look at our nutrition and restoration cornerstone in these final few weeks, so during these final few weeks, we want to be targeting fluid intake, make sure we're taking in at least half of our body weight in addition to what is lost during workouts. Stick with high nutrient density foods, aim for at least 4 servings daily of each fruit and vegetables. You want to have a replenishment meal the day prior to a long run or long ride that's high in carbs, low in fat, really top off your stores there. Try to make sleep a priority as best you can logistically. Try to get in 7.5 to 8 hours a night if you can. Take some anti-inflammatory measures. So things like omega-3 fatty acids, hydrate, reduce, or get as much sleep as you can and reduce stress. You want to also start tapering down caffeine, target less than 800 milligrams a week. And don't forget your recovery drinks after workouts to really kickstart that. All right, so then also during moving towards race week, you want to eat a relatively normal diet during race week. If it's going to be a hot forecast or in Lake Placid, a humid forecast as well, add some extra salt to your meals. Make hydration a focus, drink plenty of fluid, sports drink or water. for the 3 days leading up to the race, in addition to what is lost from workouts. Make sure you really have some electrolytes in your hydration so you're not just flushing everything out of your system. Continue to taper down caffeine intake with none on the day prior to the race. This will help any caffeine taken during the race give a little bit more of a boost, a little bit more of an effect. We recommend having a high-fat meal 5 days prior to the race, and then starting your carb load 2 nights before the race with a dinner, and then making your biggest carb meal breakfast the day before the race. Continue to make sleep a priority. And stay off your feet as much as possible. I mean, if you're on your feet for work day to day, don't panic. Don't let that get into your head, but otherwise try to, rest up and avoid unnecessary time on your feet. In terms of our fueling cornerstone in the final weeks, fuel in accordance to your plan every session. Use the products you plan to use on race day. The purpose is to train your gut for race day so you know what to expect. And use a recovery drink after workouts, as already stated. So on race day, fueling may be the most important and most likely limiter on performance, and it's have complete control over. So really make sure that you are very, very used to what you're going to do on race day and you know what to expect. In terms of our mental fitness in the final few weeks, you want to reduce external pressures as best as you can and focus on what you can control, which is your attitude throughout the course of the day and, of course, your fueling. Trust your preparation. I don't think anyone ever goes into their first, or even, for me, this is my, I think, 22nd Ironman feeling completely prepared, but that's normal, and everyone's been training. Everyone will be prepared when they get out there. You want to begin your visualization, kind of imagine what a great performance would look like, and then also how you'll respond if something goes differently. So how you'll respond if you drop a gel, if you get a flat tire, imagine yourself kind of calmly dealing with these situations, because nothing's ever perfect on race day. You'll want to list your goals and your targets. So your goals are going to be those things that you have 100% control over, which again is sort of like your attitude you take into the day and your fueling. Your targets will be your numbers that you're trying to hit. So, bike powers, run paces, heart rates. You have some control over these, but some of it will just be what your body gives you on the day. And you want to internalize those race-specific workout feels. So, when you get to like X point on the bike and you have 25 miles left, kind of what you can handle for that amount of time. And enjoy the feeling of extraordinary fitness and be grateful. There's a few times in your life you will be as fit as you are heading into an Ironman. So I think, it's good to just internalize that and be grateful that you're able to get there. All right, moving on to our pre-race logistics. So you'll want to, the athlete guide is not up at the moment here. This is still last year's, but you'll want to review that when it comes up, and the race details. Start thinking about getting your bike tuned up. Make your lists and purchase any needed items you'll need for race day. Make sure you have whatever goggles you want. There's always something to charge or replace battery-wise in triathlon. Start packing, start confirming your reservations, and plan on your race check-in time, Thursday or Friday, also Saturday mornings, new, when you're going to go to your pre-race briefing, and what time you want to do your bike and run gear check-in on Saturday. All right, so moving on to more of those race check-in logistics. So athlete check-in and timing chip pickup will be at the Lake Placid Conference Center that is located at 2634 Main Street. It's just up the road towards town from the Olympic Oval. It's kind of the road from the Crown Plaza comes down there. There's usually like a car sitting on a pedestal outside the front. You'll just go in there and they'll lead you through for your check-in. Check-in times are Thursday and Friday from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. And the current race schedule says that there's also Saturday check-in from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m., which this is new. I don't think I've ever been to an Ironman that's had day before check-in, but just if something happens, it's good to have that back up there. You'll want to bring your active.com registration QR code and your photo ID. You'll need both of them. The Ironman Village Expo with all the vendors, everything there, that will be set up at the Olympic Oval where transition is. If you're going to go there and poke around, try to go early, try to limit your time there, try not to be on your feet in the sun too much there. And the mandatory athlete briefings are also at the Oval. Those are on Thursday at 2 or 3 p.m., Friday at 12 p.m. or 3 p.m., and Saturday at 11 a.m. So when you check in, you will be given your race packet. That will include your race bib to be worn on the run. You'll get stickers. You'll get stickers for your bike frame and your bike stem and your helmet. And then you'll get a number of stickers for your gear bags. You'll get your swim cap. You will get your bike checkout in case something happens and you need someone to check your bike out for you. You'll get your wrist bag, and you will get 5 gear bags. You'll get your morning clothes bag, your bike gear, bike special needs, run gear, and run special needs. So with those gear bags, so morning clothes bag will be your clear bag. You'll put everything you want immediately post race, and everything you wear to the swim start in the morning will go into that bag. You'll drop it off race morning near the swim start, and you will pick it up post race near the finish line. A lot of times that's where the first things you can get after the race will be in your morning clothes bag. Then you will get a blue bike gear bag. This is where you'll put anything that you need for your ride. So there'll be your helmet, your bike shoes, socks if you're wearing socks, sunglasses, any nutrition that's not already packed on the bike, any sunscreen, any extra layers or clothing that you intend to put on after the swim will go into that bag. You will drop that off with your bike at bike check-in on Saturday. During the race, when you come into T1, you'll take off all your swim gear. You will put your swim gear into that bag. Volunteer will take it for you, or usually I think the volunteer takes it for you. Some races you have a drop-off area for it, but you will pick it. That will be left with your bike after the race. Then you will also get an orange bike special needs bag. So that's where you'll put anything you want halfway through the bike. You'll put any extra nutrition you want, any extra bottles, maybe a spare tube, spare CO2 cartridge, anything you can think of, clothing that you might need, you'll put into that bag. That you will drop off race morning from between 4:30 a.m. to 6 a.m. on Cummings Road near her Brooks Arena. I have a map of that on the next slide. And Lake Placid, some races don't let you get it back. Lake Placid will let you pick that up before 11 a.m. Monday where you dropped it off. So your run gear bag will be red. And that, just like the bike, you'll put anything you need for the run in there. So you'll put your race belt with your number in there, your run shoes, any socks you might want, sunscreen, any nutrition, hat, visor, any clothes you might intend to change into it, or a headlamp if you think you might be out past dark. You'll drop that off at bike gear check-in on Saturday as well. And then at the end of your ride, you'll put helmet, shoes, that kind of stuff in it if your shoes aren't still on the bike. And you will pick it up with your bike after the race. And then finally, you'll get a black run special needs bag. So again, you can hit that halfway through the run, put in extra nutrition, any sort of goodies you might want at that point in the day, extra clothes, socks. Again, maybe a headlamp in there might be a good idea. It can get pretty chilly once the sun goes down there too. So you might want to put in like a long sleeve shirt or an extra layer or something. That you will drop off race morning on Mirror Lake Drive by the stone wall and pick up before 11 a.m. Monday on a drop off. And then it's a good idea, just the numbers can come off these bags. So it's a good idea just to be safe to Sharpie your race number onto these bags just to have a little bit of backup. All right. So those bike and bike run gear bags check-in, that will be Saturday from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. at the Oval at Transition. There's very limited parking around there. If you can walk, that's usually a little bit easier. Otherwise, it can be easier to have someone just kind of drop you off and then circle around and pick you back up. Or there's some pay lots there as well. You can try to circle around in and wait for it till somebody leaves to grab a spot. And then bike and run gear bags will kind of get hung on these hooks that you'll run past and grab your bag on your way through transition. As far as these special needs bags, so you can have somebody pick up your special needs bag for you or drop off your special needs bag for you in the morning. It doesn't have to be you. In case you're like me and you need to be everywhere 45 minutes early and you're panicking, you can hand it off to a family member or something to have them drop it off for you. But Bike gear bags will be dropped off kind of, here's transition through here. Bike gear bags are kind of back behind transition up by this little road arena area here. And then run gear bags are kind of on this stone wall area on Mirror Lake Drive. So they are kind of up here. You'll see sort of the, again, stone wall, obviously. And this is where our run special needs will be. It's a little bit of a walk past the swim start. So either give yourself enough time or have someone plan to someone else to drop it off for you. All right, so the day before the race, if you're so inclined, you can get in a short shakeout run, bike or swim, depending on what's on your training schedule. There is technically a practice swim Saturday morning with it. You'll need your timing chip for, I think from 7:30 to 9. But the lake, you can pretty much go in the lake at any time and swim around there. Make sure you charge your electronics the day before. Nothing worse than having a Garmin that's out of batteries the race morning. And set out your gear for race morning. So most of your bike run gear should be packed and dropped off in bags already in transition. You will want to set out your tri-kit, your swim cap, your timing chip, your wetsuit or swim skin, sunscreen, any sort of bike bottles or nutrition you want to put on race morning, your watch, heart rate strap, body glide. Make sure your pre-race clothing is out, pack your post-race clothing, get that in the morning clothes bag, have your morning nutrition planned out, and any sort of after race snacks that you think you might want immediately, stick those in your morning clothes bag. Okay. And then kind of confirm your race morning logistics and finalize your plan for getting to the starting line. I'll have a little bit more on the shuttles in a second. And you'll make sure to try to go to bed early, set multiple alarms. Even though you'll probably wake up 37 times throughout the course of the night thinking it's time to get up already. All right, so our race morning nutrition. So for breakfast, you want just what you're gonna need for the course of the day, which will be simple carbs, fluid, electrolytes, and a small amount of protein. Avoid any fat, avoid any fiber or extra vitamins or minerals. Obviously great stuff throughout the rest of life, but when you're doing an Ironman, this is just stuff that's going to leave the digestive system slowly and cause upset. The core diet recommended breakfast is applesauce, banana, 1 scoop of whey protein, and sports drink. Try to complete your eating 3 hours prior to race start, and then sip on sports drink until the race start and top off with the gel about 15-20 minutes before hopping in the water. Approximately, it's hard to judge a little bit with the rolling start. In terms of race morning logistics, so parking or transportation, if you are not within walking distance or if you're not getting dropped off, there are athlete and spectator shuttles to behind transition that will run starting from 4:30 a.m. on race day until 1 a.m. on Monday to get back up to your car. These are at the West Valley lot, which is West Valley is a road that kind of runs sort of like behind everything in Placid. There's some shuttles coming from the Lake Placid Elementary School and the Lake Placid Firehouse. Transition is open from 4:30 a.m. to 6 a.m. When you get there, try to just review your transition layout again. Make sure you know where your bags are, where the change shunts are, get an idea of where you'll come into transition, where you'll grab your bag, where you'll go into the change tent, and where you'll run to grab your bike and head out. You'll want to drop off your special needs and morning clothes bags, apply sunscreen, and make sure all your fuel and all that is set on your bike. So our very general course overview, swim will start at the beach. T1, T2, and the finish are at the Olympic Oval. Our swim is a clockwise rectangular 2-loop swim. Bike is a 2-loop ride with a mix of everything terrain-wise. And run is a 2-loop run. It's kind of flat to slightly rolling. It's downhill, flat to slightly rolling. Then you get some uphill, a little bit more rolling, more uphill, and then repeat. All right, so diving a little bit deeper into that course. So our swim course, the pro men will start off at 6:22. Pro women will start at 6:20. Pro women will start at 6:22, and at 6:30 a.m. we will start our age group rolling start. So it's a lake swim. It's 2 loops with an Australian exit where you run out onto the beach, run through some arches, run back into the water halfway through. You will self-seed in these swim start corrals. It's a rolling start from the beach based on the estimated finish time. Water temperature will be announced race morning. More than likely, it's in the high 60s, low 70s. I think it's been trending a little bit warmer already this year, but I don't know after this past weekend when it got colder. But be ready for anything. Wetsuits are permitted up to and including 76.1 degrees Fahrenheit. I think it's maybe once, like 2011, I think once it wasn't wetsuit legal for awards, but every other year it's usually been kind of in that like 70 to 73 range for the most part, the years I've raced. If it is over 76.1, wetsuits will be optional. Wetsuits may be warm, but they are, if you wear one, you will not be eligible for awards or world championship slots, and you will start in a separate wave. In a non-wetsuit swim, all swimwear must be completely textile. You can't have like neoprene or floaty shorts, and any clothing cannot extend past the elbows or the knees. So if you were planning on wearing calf sleeves and it was a non-wetsuit swim, you would have to put those on after the swim as well. In terms of the swim course, there can be some sun glare coming from the right. So if it's a sunny morning, you know, consider that in your goggle choice. Obviously, with this swim course, it's kind of famous for having the buoy line, which is a rope just several feet below the surface along the entire course. It's great in that you don't really have to sight much, but the other trick of that is there will be a lot of congestion on that line. So expect contact if you want to try to swim directly on the buoy line. And also watch out for buoys. I mean, you can swim head on into a buoy if you're not paying attention on that line. I've done that, and it's a little bit startling at times. So your buoys will be on your right every 100 meters. We're on the loops. There are yellow buoys on the first half and orange buoys on the second half. And then you will have your 3 red turn buoys and then exit and come back out. Almost always the lake is calm. That's why it's called Mirror Lake, but just with the sheer amount of, I don't know, 2,500, 3,000 people in a small lake, it can get rough just due to the volume of people that are swimming at once. So just to kind of be prepared for that. It does get kind of a nice whirlpool effect though with the amount of people that can help kind of pull along to a little bit quicker swim times sometimes. And then once you exit the swim to come out to transition, there's a fairly sizable run, but it is carpeted the whole way. So you don't have to worry about running on barefoot on pavement. So just kind of some pictures of our swim course here. This is just looking out, kind of a beautiful morning over the lake. Buoy set up, ready to go. This is just race morning, just to give you an idea of, you know, this is kind of the beach where you'll start. Here's the arch where you come out and run back in. And then staging is on the beach here. And then this is our long run up to transition with carpeted, and also you get some nice glamour shots along the way if your family loves you. So race day swim pacing. So as mentioned, this is a self-seated rolling start. Be realistic about your swim time. It's always kind of tempting to think, oh, I'll get more time if I start it further. That's not how it works. I was always kind of a back of the pack pro swimmer, and last year we had a 3-minute difference to the age grouper, and I can reassure everybody that getting swam over is not fun at all. I got pretty pummeled there. So, you know, be realistic. It's a lot better of experience if you are around people who are swimming about your pace. Try to get in the water, take those first 200 to 300 meters up tempo, and then settle into tempo. I mean, this is Ironman. It's, you know, there's music playing. It's a very like amped up situation. So if you find yourself getting into the water and just, you know, feeling a little bit breathless and just need to calm down and take it slow too, that's fine. You want to shoot for over and all an RPE of about 7 out of 10 throughout the course of the swim. So sort of like a tempo-ish feel. If you're anxious, again, start conservative and build. Nothing wrong with that. You are going to get hit, so expect it. It's not malicious most of the time, at least you would hope not, but it's, again, it's just a lot of bodies in a small amount of space. So just don't, you know, be prepared for some contact. And if you want less contact, stay further away from the buoy line, stay further to the left. Use other swimmers to your benefit to draft and sight off of if you can. And again, buoys should be kept on your right. You have to keep the turn buoys to your right. Turns will be crowded, stay wide. Be prepared for lapping swimmers to the inside. So the pros are kind of instructed on their second lap because they'll be running into the age group rolling start to stay to the inside of the buoys. So it's a better idea to stay to the outside of the buoys to allow the kind of faster pro swimmers coming through lapping, which will be from about 6:45 to 7:30-ish in the morning time-wise to just allow them through. And then try to increase the kick for the last 100 to 200 yards to prepare your legs for coming up onto the beach, running, getting a little blood flow, more blood flow coming, so you're not going to get as lightheaded coming out of the water. All right, so our bike course overview. I swear this bike course changes frequently, but again, this is a 2-loop bike course coming. I'll go into more detail, but we've got kind of a climb out of town, descent down into Keene, get some nice kind of flats and downhill stuff coming towards Jay. Then we've got sort of this new little loop here that's a change from the course last year. And then you'll turn, kind of start climbing, go down a little bit, and then kind of get your famous sort of last 11 miles of climbing out of the course. All right, so 2 loops, 112 miles, mostly good road conditions. Mostly there are some spots that are a little bit iffier than others, but it's about 7,000 feet of climbing, depending on what your watch or bike computer says. Basically, you'll be going up a lot, but it's not terrible. And the sections I kind of broke it down into that I'll go through are our transition to our descent, our Keene descent, sort of our J flats, this sort of new loop as I'm calling it. Then you'll come up to 86 and then climb up to Wilmington back to town. So our transition to descent, this is our first about 12-mile section here. Be very, very cautious coming out of transition, especially if it is raining. Lake Placid does have a tendency to be kind of drizzly in the morning sometimes. So this first little section through here is a little bit windy, and there's a couple sort of like steep descents into turns. There's one that usually has hay bales around it. So, just be very cautious coming through there. You are not going to make or break your day. Well, I guess you could break it, but you're not going to make your day in the first literal mile of the bike course. So be cautious. And the early portion, when you first start coming down 73, be cautious there too. That's one of the little bit rougher pavement portions of the town. There's a couple little kind of just steep downhills that they're not long, but they're fairly quick. And there's a couple places where it's a little rough. There's usually a lot of people. So just ride heads up through there. Once you get through that initial portion, you'll start your climb up out of town here. So that is kind of coming up 73 here. You'll do sort of like about a little over 2-mile climb. It's not that steep. It doesn't look that bad, but don't get carried away. It's easy to think like, oh, this isn't that steep. This isn't that long, but you can easily burn too many matches at that point of the day. So just use all your gears, kind of spin up that, let people go past you, take it easy through there. And then once you get up that and go, kind of do a little bit of rolling stuff, you'll do your little out and back on Mount Van Hovenberg. This is a pretty nice section here. It's like smooth road, wide road. You'll go around a little loop at the end of that out and back, and there's an aid station in there. All right, so once you get through those first 12-ish miles, you'll get to your Keene descent. So this is kind of a fairly famous part of the course, but it's a little over 1,100 feet of elevation loss over about 4 to 4.5 miles. So it's overall about a negative 5% grade, but it's really kind of demarcated into 3 separate sections. You'll see those like signs for trucks to go downhill that will start each section. First section, it's kind of paved, it's very good road condition. Second section, last time I rode it, I don't know if it's been paved or not this year, but last time I rode it last year, there were just some of those like little snow plow heaves in there, and a little bit smoother in the tire tracks. There's some curves. You will have pretty much like a lane and a half on this descent on race day. So there's plenty of road to use. I mean, obviously hold your line, but there is plenty of width for multiple riders going down there. Third section, it's a little bit better road condition than second, but it's got a little bit more curves, a couple steep parts, but it's all manageable. It is possible to control speed throughout this whole descent. It's never too steep for brakes to work, especially if it's dry. And I think probably, you know, even if you have rim brakes, you'll be okay. But if you are a more cautious descender, if you want to take it a little bit easier, just be sure to keep to your right and hold your line so that, you know, the more speed demons will have space to get past you safely. Be prepared for any conditions. I think, you know, I kind of alluded to this, that Placid can go from being downpouring to sunny in 5 minutes. It did that last year. So, you know, just be prepared that it might be raining, it might be hailing, it might be windy, or it might be beautiful. So you never really know what you're going to get. And just stay calm and controlled on the descent. Use a breather. I think, you know, every time I've done this race and I've gotten to the second lap, I've kind of gotten to the descent and been like, oh, you know, this is kind of nice. I could take a little bit of a break here and just like regroup a little bit, as long as it's not freezing. All right, so just some pictures of the descent here. You know, this is kind of our first portion coming down from Cascade. Just it's trying to, I mean, obviously look at the road, pay attention to what you're doing, but it's very beautiful. Second section again, it's a little bit, you know, a couple curves in there, but still fairly, you know, smooth road. And then finally, here's our third section, kind of coming down some of the final turns towards the bottom of the descent. All right, so once you get down the descent, you will be in Keene Valley, and you'll get this nice, smooth section along 9N that's about 10 miles long. This is really one of the nicest sections of the course. It's just great place to just kind of get in your bars, sail along smoothly. It's smooth. There's beautiful river views there. Just kind of enjoy that section of the course. It's a good place to kind of refuel after getting down the descent, refill, etc. All right, so then you'll get to your new loop. So just kind of disclaimer here that I haven't actually seen this in person. I've just kind of read a little bit about it and kind of looked it up, seen what I can see about it. But there are, from what I've heard and what I can see on sort of the elevation chart here, there's like some punchy climbs that come through this little section, especially this kind of first section through here. And then you'll get this descent, which is actually, this is sort of like the Google Street View of it, of coming down towards 9N. So just be prepared that you're going to be going downhill and then coming into this left-hand turn here. And then the section on 9N is fairly flat. This actually was part of the course like 11, 12 years ago. I'm not sure when they changed it off of that, but that'll be our new loop. You know, it's like 10 miles long. Just be prepared to get a little bit of elevation, some climbing in there, and just be careful of that descent. All right, so once we come off this little new loop here, you will now make a right-hand turn up what's kind of one of the steeper, tougher climbs of the course. It doesn't get as much attention as the final 11 miles, but this is probably one of the steeper portions. Just make sure when you make this turn to have your gearing ready, because it's going to go up quickly. This will be kind of a net uphill through this section here with a couple quick downhills. Again, these are kind of like underrated climbs in that they don't get as much attention, but they're some of the tougher ones on the course. And if you get like one of those days where it rains early and then it kind of burns off, you get just like steam come off the road here. So it can be, you know, climbing, can get kind of warm, steamy. The trees kind of can trap some humidity here through here. And then once you get further down the road, instead of there used to be an out and back on Hazelton Road. Now you'll just kind of loop onto this Bill Huber Road and then loop back onto Hazelton to meet back up to 86 to climb back up. All right, so getting to the final 11 to 12 miles of each loop, our climb here. So this is sort of just like our grind back up to town. So you'll see a lot of landmarks along the way. There's an A&W. You'll go past a campground. There's kind of this section goes past Flume Falls, which is a little bit steeper. There's a section that goes past White Base Mountain that's a little bit more steeper of a climb. It will sort of flatten out a bit. You'll see High Falls Gorge on your right. And then you'll see some trailheads to various ponds, which are kind of variable climbing and flatter. You'll go past River Road, you'll climb a little bit, it flattens out, and then you hit the kind of Three Bears portion of the course. So this is not purely a straight up portion. There's plenty of sections that are flat or falls flat in between the steeper pitches to kind of resettle, get back in your bars, you know, take a little bit of the pressure off. It's this is just all about pacing throughout this section and having patience through there. Do not bomb your way up the first loop for sure. The Three Bears are kind of the most notorious hills, I think, on this course. They're not necessarily even the worst hills on the course. It's just they're placed right at the end of each loop. So you'll go up Mama Bear, which is kind of like a moderate hill. Then there's Baby Bear, which is barely anything. And then Papa Bear is kind of the bigger climb right towards the end. It's mostly notorious just for where it's placed near the end of the route, but there's a lot of crowd support there. It's actually kind of fun because everyone's out cheering. And then the other change from last year is that there's used to go out and back on 86 kind of through town. Instead, you will now turn right on Northwood. So that is kind of this section right there. You'll make this right-hand turn onto Northwood instead of continuing on to the out and back. And that has kind of another small climb. So it's a little bit of a kicker once you get at Papa Bear and you have to turn immediately and climb a little bit more. But then you'll kind of go down, you'll hit Parkside and Mirror Lake Drive, you'll go down Main Street, and then you'll go up behind Transition again, which is where you will hit your special needs bags, and then you will repeat. So special needs bags, just kind of a word on that. You'll see, I think I actually have that on another slide, but you will kind of come up, you'll see there'll be volunteers, you'll call out your number, they will grab your bag for you, and you can either kind of like grab the bag, stop a little bit further, or just pull off, not in the way of other people, and grab your bag and get what you need out of it. All right, so this is our kind of final few portions of the final climb. So this is, I believe, kind of coming up one of the steeper portions earlier on near the campground. And then this is another one of the kind of more challenging portions coming up past Whiteface. This is looking up Papa Bear at the very end of each loop. And then this is kind of looking down at me climbing Papa Bear on a rainy year, obviously, at the end of each loop. All right, so our bikes fueling on race day. So there are aid stations approximately every 10 to 15 miles. There's 5 per loop. I think the one exception, there's a little bit bigger gap between aid stations 2 and 3 on each loop. I think that's more like 17 miles, just so be prepared there. So they will have, we get to be the guinea pigs, I think, of the first North American Ironman that has mortal hydration instead of Gatorade. So the aid stations will have water and mortal hydration for fluid, and they will also have Morton gels, caffeinated and non-caffeinated, bars and bananas, or you can carry your own. So on the left, you'll see there's kind of a obviously this whole switch to mortal has gotten a lot of attention. It's not the best thing for Ironman, to say the least. Gatorade Endurance that used to be on course in a 24-ounce bottle used to have 44 grams of carbs, and one packet of, to make one bottle of Mortal, only has 10 grams of carbs. So most of my athletes I've been recommending just carrying your own fluid. Most people can fit 3 or 4 bikes or bottles on their bike. Having your proper fuel is way more important than an extra pound of fluid on your bike. So, you know, we've really been mostly recommending to carry your own fluids instead of relying on what's on course anymore. But be aware there are new rules that you can't put a bottle down the front of your kit. So all bottles will have to be on your bike. And then, as mentioned, special needs are behind the high school. In order to, you know, if you are carrying 3 or 4 bottles, you can stop at special needs, swap those out, put the new ones on the bottle. It should take less than a minute or 2. And as always, be heads up at the aid stations. Make sure that you are pulled over and safe for when you do your bottle grabs. All right, so our Morton gels, black do not have caffeine, white are caffeinated. Morton gels are low in sodium. They only have 22 milligrams versus 200 milligrams in most gels. So if you're relying on those, make sure you're getting your electrolytes from another source. The caffeinated gels are high in caffeine. They have 100 milligrams versus 20 to 25, maybe up to 50 in a lot of other gels. And they are a hydrogel consistency. All right, so race day, if we look at how we ideally want to try to pace this course. So if you're pacing by heart rate, usually what we recommend is trying to have your heart rate kind of in a U shape where the first quarter and the last quarter heart rates are the highest two heart rates of the ride. And then sort of in the middle, it flattens out a little bit. And ideally, you want to have our second half or second loop heart rate about 2 to 3 beats higher than the first. This is obviously as able with the terrain per lap. Obviously, the descent in there will kind of change things a little bit. Power-wise, you want to try to meter out power as evenly on the flats and gradual hills and contain on the climbs best you can. So kind of what you're theoretically trying to do is quote unquote flatten out the course to have fairly even power output as much as possible. So on the hills, try to cap about 50 watt Ironman power. You can gain a little bit more by putting out a little bit more effort up the hills, but within reason. You don't want to be tapping into your capacity too much. Your descent will knock down the average power and heart rate for the lap. Don't try to make it up elsewhere. Just let that be. Second loop, ideally, we want to have slightly higher than the first if it's a properly paced ride. And again, don't overdo that first 10 to 12 miles on the climb out of town or the final 11 miles on the first loop. I've done both of these things. I think I was freezing coming out of transition last year, just like hammered that first climb. And by the end of the second lap, I was feeling it. So, just use caution, especially early on when you're amped up. And then again, the final 11 miles of the first loop usually don't seem like they're that bad, but then they catch up to you. The second loop that climbing seems like it's a lot more. Pace-wise, pace is going to be affected by the wind conditions on the day, the climbing, and the weather. So it's hard to really compare bike times from year to year on this course too much. Ideally, you want your rating of perceived exertion to be about a 5 to 7 out of 10, depending on your level of experience and your level of comfort pushing through an Ironman ride. And so some of the sticking points that kind of are a little bit tougher can be like on the first loop. Sometimes when you leave town after the first loop, that can be a little bit rough just because, you kind of go through this, you get through your climbing, you go through town, there's all this energy, there's all these people, there's all this cheering, you see your family, see your friends, see your coach. And then you leave town and it's just, you're climbing again and it's quiet and it's a little bit of a letdown. So, that can be a little bit of a mental sticking point there. Getting to the bottom, the descent too can be a little bit of a sticking point because you kind of you get this nice rest and then you can, breathe a sigh of relief when you get through the descent a second time, and then you realize you still have a lot of riding left to do. And usually there's some point, the final 11 miles of the second loop, it feels a lot longer than it did a loop earlier. All right, in terms of our equipment, I think you have monitor the Ironman Lake Placid Facebook group sometimes for better or worse. But there's a lot of questions on tri-bike versus road bike. For the majority of athletes, a tri-bike will still be the best choice because there are a lot of prolonged, relatively flat stretches. And even on the climbs, there are areas that it does flatten out. There are plenty of places to get into the bars and cruise there. But I mean, obviously, if road bike is what you have, what you're comfortable with, that is not the wrong choice at all either. If you've trained on hills, there's not really much of a need to go be freaking out about trying to change your gearing or your crank or anything like that at this point. Most of the climbing throughout the course is kind of at that more gradual, like 3 to 5% grade. I will say it is nice to have on the cassette, have like a 28 tooth cog or greater on there just to get up some of the tougher hills or just to be able to keep it for a little bit less of a grind up some of the hills. It will depend sort of on the wind conditions on the day, just your general comfort and experience. There may be crosswinds on the descent, so consider your wheel depth based on that and how comfortable you are handling the bike in crosswinds on the descent. Stronger or more experienced riders who are comfortable bike handlers will find that a rear disc wheel is a little bit faster, but as err on the side of your comfort level. I can attest that I did not do that last weekend when I was racing, and I lost time because I was sitting up trying to keep control of the bike. So always, it's better to be a little bit more comfortable than a little bit more aggressive if you're on the edge. All right, so our race day penalties or rules. On the bike, obviously, you can get blue card for a drafting violation, which is a 5-minute penalty. You have to keep 6 bike lengths or 12 meters between your bike's front wheel and the rear wheel of the cyclist in front of you. Pass on the left, complete within 25 seconds. And once you are passed, you have to make, quote, immediate and constant rear progress after being passed. I mean, it just has to be clear that you are making an effort to drop back. If you get 3 drafting penalties, you'll get a red card and you'll get disqualified. If an official comes up to you, shows you the blue card, you have to stop at the next penalty tent. You can't wait till you get back to transition. You have to stop at the very next penalty tent you see. Blocking violations are a yellow card. These are a 1-minute penalty. So this is if you're riding to the left of the lane and somebody can't get past you on the left, that is a blocking violation. So just keep as far to the right as you can safely at all times. And again, you must stop at the next penalty tent. Whenever you're on your bike, you have to have your chin strap fastened on your helmet. Really, it's just first thing you should do when you get into T2 and get your helmet is put it on. Last thing you should do is take it off. Don't run out of T2 with the helmet on. I've also done that, but make sure, it's on when you're on the bike. You cannot use cell phones, MP3 players, or etc. in a distractive manner, such as calls, texts, pictures, or music. You can have your phone on your person, but you cannot be using it during the ride. No outside assistance. This applies to the run as well. You can't have friends, coaches, anyone run or ride alongside you. You can't have them hand you nutrition. You can't have them hand you clothes, anything like that. Zipper rule. So you can unzip your top, but the bottom of the zipper must be connected at all times. Just one little kind of hack my husband's done is just put a safety pin at the bottom so he can't unzip too far by accident. Top has to stay over the shoulders, and you're supposed to zip up for the finish line. Females can wear sports bras, so females can fully unzip, pull down the top completely, roll it up, tuck it into shorts, and run in a sports bra. That is still okay. And kind of classic rule, can't cross the finish line with non-racers. Make your family wait till you finish and to greet them at the end of the finish line. All right, new and updated penalties and rules. So littering violation, intentional or careless littering is a blue card 5-minute penalty. So you can only throw things at aid stations. Do not be throwing your bottles outside of aid stations. Don't be throwing gel wrappers. 5-minute penalty if you get caught. And even if you don't get caught, you shouldn't be doing that because we want to have this race continue and we want people to like us. As previously discussed, there's the zipper rule. And then going back to kind of that bottle down the top, this is kind of a new rule here in that equipment that has the effect of reducing wind resistance is prohibited, whether the equipment is worn under the athlete's clothing, over the athlete's clothing, or otherwise attached to the athlete's body or athlete's bike. So this includes, but is not limited to, any bottles or hydration other than inserts located in the or any other insert located in the front of the athlete's race suit, or any insert in calf sleeves. So I think last year, you're seeing more and more just people with ridiculous like bottles down the front of the jersey to reduce drag. That is no longer allowed. You also cannot have protective screens, fuselages, fairings, or any other devices or materials added or blended into the structure with the intent to reduce resistance to air penetration. Aerodynamic assemblies and protuberances on the head tube or elsewhere are prohibited, provided that the use of adhesive tape, including duct tape, does not fundamentally alter or enlarge the general shape of the structure. Adhesive tape may be affixed to the bike, such as covering the valve cut up of a rear disc wheel to cover bolts, access, etc. So you can still, if you need to tape a gel to your bike or something, you can do that. This is more referring to like somebody like 3D printing a fuselage and adding it to their bike, things like that. So just, ride your bike as is. All right, moving on to our run course. So again, a couple changes on the run course this year as well from previous courses. It's still kind of, you've got your downhill portion, then you've got sort of this flat to slightly rolling portion, then you've got more climbing, and then you've got a little bit of like uphill, downhill, and more uphill, and then repeat. So you'll kind of come down Main Street, down Route 73 Sentinel Road. You'll do a slightly shorter out and back in River Road this year. Come back up 73. Now you do this sort of new little out and back on Route 86. This actually used to be what you did on the bike, is now on the run. And you'll come up Main Street and do a little bit of an out and back on Mirror Lake Drive and repeat. Sort of a mix of sun and shade on this course, depending on the day. All right, so breaking that down a little bit further. So first, a couple miles are this descent down from Transition, down through town, down 73. You'll get sort of this flatter portion through here before hitting a little bit more of a downhill onto River Road. So that's really just kind of these first couple miles here. So like I said, this two-tiered downhill, but you get like this sort of steep descent coming out of Transition, flattens out, get a little bit more of a descent coming towards River Road. Then River Road is now a little bit under, it's about like 2.2, 2.3 miles each way out and back. It's flat to gently rolling. It's pretty quiet out there. It can get kind of like muggy and stagnant. This is another place that if it rains, you'll see like steam coming off the road. Last year, there was actually like a 5-minute torrential downpour right as I was starting the run, and then it was just steam coming off River Road again. But it's very pretty. It's very scenic through there. Once you come off River Road, you'll come up what you went down. So first off, River Road is a little bit like steeper of an uphill, a little bit punchier of a section through there. And then again, it flans out a little bit, just slightly downhill. And then you'll come up kind of this steep Sentinel Hill 73 section right here, which is one of the steeper portions of the course. It's pretty tough there, but there's a lot of great crowd support there. But again, don't be a hero. This is one of those sections that, like, for a lot of people, it makes sense to just kind of power walk up this. You won't lose time and you won't burn yourself out trying to get up this hill. And then now you have your new out and back. So before you would just kind of turn and continue to head up Main Street. Now you turn and do this little out and back on 86. So that's kind of like a little bit of an uphill and then a little bit of a downhill. And then you'll get back out to Main Street, where you'll continue to climb. This is a little bit tougher of an uphill section. Turn onto River Road, and then it's kind of like gradual uphill, gradual downhill back through there. And you repeat through that. Special needs, you'll hit on right about through there, kind of, or not there, on Mirror Lake Drive, kind of halfway through the run. And then on your second lap, you will divert back to the Olympic Oval. And obviously, instead of heading out, it's just soak it all in there. You'll kind of go through a little section before you get into the oval, where it's just like this little kind of quiet area. And you can just have, a couple seconds to think about what you're about to accomplish. And then you get this awesome like run around the oval. That's great finish. All right, so looking at some of the sections of the course, this is coming out of Transition, initially coming right down Main Street. So get a little bit nice descent that can, usually it's nice to get your legs under you. And then this is on the flip side, this is coming back up Main Street towards the end of the loop. This here is coming up Sentinel, up 73, kind of up that steep, punchy climb through there. And then obviously we have our oval finish line. That's one of the best. All right, so our race day run fueling. Aid stations are approximately every mile. They will, again, have water, Mortal Hydration. I think they still should have Red Bull. They'll have Morton gels, bars, cola, chips, pretzels, banana, oranges, grapes. Later in the day, they will bring out broth, and they'll have ice and kind of ice sponges, especially on hotter days. Other option is to carry your own nutrition. My husband would probably kill me if he knew he put a picture from that run. He had melted down nicely that day, but he was nicely carrying lots of his own nutrition that day. Again, with the change to mortal hydration, getting a belt that can double as a belt that will hold a couple small bottles, and a race number belt is a good idea as well. So you can have what you need. So in terms of our pacing cornerstone for the run, we want our heart rate to be about our bike heart rate plus 5 to 10 beats. You want to try to stay as even as possible over the terrain within reason. Obviously, heart rate's going to be a little bit higher up the hills, a little bit lower down the hills. And you want to try to have your second half heart rate as close to the first as possible. So this is an Ironman. Usually there is some drop off just based on physiology, just based on training, just based on durability. But try to stay as even as you can throughout the course of the day. And don't overdo the downhill out of transition. It's easy to kind of come down that and blast out that and feel like $1,000,000 because you're off the bike and everyone's cheering. But just, use caution there. Don't blow out your quads trying to rapidly run down this hill. And like I said, walk the steep sections as needed. I think I did the math last year, and it's like maybe 30 seconds of difference between walking and running, and you save a lot of energy trying to walk some of those steep sections. So pace-wise, you will be faster than your goal pace out of transition. It is downhill, but don't go crazy. Try to settle in, kind of smooth things out a little bit on River Road, and don't chase a pace on climbs. Kind of monitor your power, if you run with power, monitor your heart rate as you're able. And again, RPE about 5 to 7 on a scale of 10, depending on where you are. All right, so our race day mental fitness, you want to, again, focus on goals as your number one priority. So these are, again, our items we have 100% control over, which are attitude and fueling plan. Secondly, you want to focus on targets such as your power, your pace, your heart rate, monitor those, try to hit those the best that your body will allow you on the day. Stick to your plan, including how you react when something doesn't go according to the plan. If something happens, just stay calm, deal with it, continue on. I think, those days that you have that are like that, it sucks in the moment, but looking back, I think they're some of the days that you end up being the most proud of because you stuck with it, and when things weren't perfect. It's easy to keep going when things are perfect, not as much when they aren't. Any outcomes should be left to the second half of the run, if at all. So if you're trying to come in top 10 in your age group, or you're trying to get a world championship slot, and, that's when you can start chasing those carrots and using that to kind of spur you on through there. Be who you are and show appreciation for your supporters, volunteers, family, and friends. In that picture, I was not appreciating my husband, and I can tell you I did not have a great attitude in that race, and it showed. So, it's something I've lesson learned. Appreciate those around you and have a good attitude on race day. So time cutoffs, hopefully that won't apply to anyone here, but you will have 17 hours to complete the entire race once you cross the starting mat at the swim start. Anyone who does not complete the event in 17 hours will be designated as a DNF. Obviously, aid station stops, transitions are all included in total elapsed time. And then moving on to our individual cutoff times for each segment. Swim cutoff is 2 hours and 20 minutes after the last athlete enters the water. Each athlete will have 2 hours and 20 minutes to complete the 2.4-mile swim. So if you start further up and are still over 2:20, you will still receive a DNF. Ironman officials reserve the right to pull athletes off the course who exceed any established course time cutoffs. And then T1, you have to, after the swim course closes, you have 10 minutes to get out of there. So if you are getting out of the water right at the end of the swim cutoff, be sure you're out of transition within 10 minutes. Bike course will close 10 hours and 30 minutes after the last athlete enters the water. Each athlete will have 10 hours and 30 minutes to complete the swim, T1, and the bike course. Any athlete that takes longer than 10.5 hours to complete the swim, T1, and bike course will receive a DNF and not be permitted to continue. T2 closes 10 minutes after the bike course cutoff. So there is an intermediate bike cutoff too. You have to pass behind the high school to start the second lap by 1:40 p.m. So depending on when you get in the water, this can be about 6 to 6.5 hours, just a little over 7 hours into the race. You have to be done with your swim and the first lap of your bike. Okay. And then run course closes 17 hours after the last athlete enters the water. Each athlete has 17 hours to complete the course. And any athlete that takes longer than 17 hours will receive a DNF. So there is an intermediate cutoff on the run course. You have to start your second loop at Main Street and Mirror Street Drive by 9 p.m. All right, spectators, they can follow along on the Ironman athlete tracking app, just so they have an idea of where you are in the course. They can hang out at pre-agreed locations on the course. Swim, you might be able to catch a glimpse between laps. Kind of hard to tell people when they're in swim caps and wetsuits. And you can also catch people kind of running from the lake up to transition is another popular area where there's a ton of people watching. On the bike, some good places to watch are initially out of transition, kind of down 73 out of town. There tends to be a lot of people. When you get to the end of the first lap and the start of the second, Papa Bear, again, is a good place to catch your athletes or have people come watch you because it's a long climb. You can see down for a ways, catch people. Mirror Lake Drive, Parkside, Main Street, sort of through town. Those are all popular areas. And then kind of coming up behind the high school right here, like going past towards special needs is another good area. There tends to not be too many people through here, and there's a little bit of like an uphill coming up through here, so it's another good place to catch people and actually be able to like get their attention. Run, tons of good places to catch people on the run. You can, come up the big hill on 73 or Sentinel Hill. Now we have our main out and back on 86 that you can catch people a couple places. Main Street, obviously popular place, and Mirror Lake Drive is another good place. And if your family is really motivated, they can try to get to a couple different places on the out and backs now. There is time if somebody wants to catch you coming up street before that you hit the final little out and back to Mirror Lake Drive. There usually is time for them to cheer for you there and then get to the finish line in time. Post race. So gear checkout is from 6 p.m. to 12 a.m. That might go a little bit later than that, obviously, because the final finishers are at 12 a.m. But you have to have your wristband or your bike checkout ticket that you've signed and handed to a family member. If you're in a good position, come back and cheer. It's a lot of fun hanging out there, cheering everyone on throughout all hours of the night, and being with your friends and family. The slot allocation and awards are the next morning. So those will be 9 a.m. at the horse show grounds, which are just kind of a little bit down Sentinel Road, just out of town. It's nice that the whole race isn't there anymore, but awards and slot allocations are still there. So there are 55 Kona slots for men there and 50 knee slots for, that should say, women that will be there. Morning clothes bag pickoff. Placid is nice because it lets you pick up your morning clothes bags. Those will be until 11 a.m. where you drop them off. So on Parkside, north of the tennis courts, or that should say behind the high school, and on Mirror Lake Drive. And then after the race, really try to support the local community. I mean, there's always like talk of the locals not liking Ironman there. It's kind of overplayed, I think, but it's nice to get out and support the local community, try to support the local shops and restaurants. There's a lot of cool Ironman things you can find out there if you want some sort of souvenir. Try to be courteous and tip well, just be polite, make someone stay better, and get out and explore. It's such a beautiful, fun, gorgeous area. All right, and then you can give us a follow there. And questions. I know we have a bunch in the chat, so I will just kind of start going through those. Yep, I think Reem got.
Yeah, there were quite a few questions. Well, back and forth about the mortal question and how it's being delivered on the course. So
yeah.
So it seems like it's been in the disposable Poland Springs water bottles, but pre-mixed on the bike and then in cups on the run.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think the only other question in the chat box was if cars will be on the roads for the bike. Or if it's close to traffic.
The roads will be, they'll be controlled. So on the descent, you'll have a full, I think it's a full like lane and a half coned off that cars won't be anywhere near you. And then the rest, it's one of the better courses in terms of car control.
All right, so Jennie's contact information is there if you have any questions. Also, once this is up on YouTube, you can put in any comments on YouTube as well, and we'd be happy to get back to you. So just want to thank everyone for joining this evening for this course preview. Thank you, Jennie, for your very good presentation, providing a lot of information, and hope to see most of you out at Lake Placid.
Thanks so much for joining.